Hello everyone, in today's lesson we're going to perform some operations with complex numbers. So we're going to add them, subtract them, and multiply them. So in the previous lesson we simplified only the powers of complex numbers, of imaginary numbers. So now we're going to actually add. And adding and subtracting is just combining like terms like with any expression that we've been doing so far and you've been doing in algebra. So let's look at the two complex numbers. The first number is 2 plus 5i, and the second number is 12 minus 2i. First, we're going to add them in example 1. So adding complex numbers is just adding like terms. So here I have the real part. We're going to add the real part. So 2 plus 12 will give me 14. And then I'm going to add imaginary parts. So 5i minus 2i is going to give us 3i, positive 3i. So it's 14 plus 3i is the answer. Subtracting is just slightly different. You just have to be very careful because when you have a subtraction sign right here, you have to distribute this negative sign through the complex number that is right behind it. So I'm going to have 2 plus 5i, and then I'm going to distribute the negative to 12 and negative to I. So negative 1 times 12 is going to be negative 12, and negative 1 times negative 2i, it will turn it into positive 2i. And at this point, we're going to combine like terms. So we're going to add real parts. So 2 minus 12 will give me negative 10, and 5i plus 2i is 7i. So now take a moment, pause the video, and answer the question below. Describe how to add or subtract two complex numbers. After you finish, unpause it and continue with me in example 2. Alright, let's now learn how to multiply numbers. So I have the same two numbers and I want to multiply them. So it's 2 plus 5i times 12 minus 2i. So we're going to multiply by distributive property. So first I'm going to multiply the first term. So 2 times 12 is 24. Then I'm going to multiply 2 times negative 2i, which is negative 4i. Then I'm going to multiply 5i times 12, and that will give me 60i. And 5i times negative 2i is negative 10i squared. I times I is I squared. At this time, I'm going to combine like terms, and I have two terms that are like negative 4i and 60i. So I'm going to add them. So now I have 24. Negative 4 plus 60 is positive 56i minus 10. And here's the moment when you have to be very careful, because I squared has a value, and we know that I squared is equal to negative 1. So at this moment we have to substitute negative 1 for I squared to fully simplify this complex number. And let's simplify further. So I have 24 plus 56i, now plus 10, because negative 10 times negative 1 is positive 10. Last step, combine any like terms that are left. So I have 24 and 10 are like terms, so I'm going to add them now. So 24 plus 10 is 34, plus 56i is my answer. So now pause the video and take a moment to describe how to multiply two complex numbers, and you have to explain what happens when you get an I squared. After you finish, unpause the video and continue with me. In this part 3, you have 6 problems to either add, subtract, or multiply. If you are ready to do them all by yourself, you can just stop the video and complete all of the 6 problems and then check your answers. If you still need guidance, continue on with me. So this is your decision right now. You can stop it or you can continue on. Okay, let's look at example number 1. Here I'm noticing that I have an addition. So I'm going to combine like terms. I have 1 plus 3 is 4. And I have negative 1i plus negative 12i will give me negative 13i. And this is my answer. It's the complex number in the form of, remember, it's a plus bi. So it has a real part and imaginary part. In example number 2, I have 5i times 3i. So I'm going to multiply coefficients. So 5 times 3 is 15. And I times I is I squared. I squared is not simplified for you. I can simplify more. So 15. And I know that I squared has a value of negative 1. So my answer is negative 15. Okay, on the next problem, I'm noticing that I have a minus. So I need to subtract. So you can either subtract mentally, you can do mental math, or you can just rewrite it without parentheses and making sure you distribute the negative through 3 and negative 12. And I prefer that method because then you'll make less mistakes. So I have 1 minus I, that doesn't change, and then negative 1 times 3 is negative 3, and negative 1 times negative 12 is positive 12i. Combine like terms, and this is the answer. Okay, example number 4. I have a multiplication problem and I need to distribute. So I times 5 is 5i, I times negative 3i is negative 3i squared. 5i minus 3, I squared is negative 1. So now I have negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3, and I'm going to write this part first and imaginary part next. Okay, the next example requires distributive property twice, so be careful with it. 1 times 3, I went too far, is 3. 1 times negative 12i is negative 12i. Negative I times 3 is negative 3i. Negative I times negative 12 is positive 12i squared. Combine like terms and substitute negative 1 for I squared. So I know that 12 times negative 1 is negative 12, and then I have to combine it with 3. So I have 3 minus 12 is going to be negative 9 minus 15i. Alright, the next problem. First, I have 2i to the power of 3, and both 2 and I are in parentheses, so I need to raise both of them to power of 3. So 2 to the power of 3 is 8, and I to the power of 3 times 5i. Then I'm going to add exponents. I has exponent of 1, so I'm going to multiply coefficients 8 and 5, which gives me 40. And then I have I to the third times I to the first. I'm going to keep the base and add exponents. I know that I to the fourth is just 1, so now I have 40 times 1, which equals to 40. And that's the answer. Right, example 4. Your job is to select all cells in the table for which the product value is a complex number after simplifying. So I would like you to again try it yourself, pause it when you're ready to unpause it. I'm going to give you a hint. You have to actually do the multiplication, write it in each cell, simplify it fully, and then decide if it's complex or if it turns out to be real. Okay, go ahead. So I have negative 2 times I is negative 2i. Negative 2 times negative 3 is just 6. Negative 2i times I will give me negative 2i squared, which will turn into negative 2 times negative 1, and that is equal to just 2. I hope you can read that. Then I have negative 2i times negative 3, which is 6i. 7 times I is 7i. 7 times negative 3 is negative 21. Next, I squared times I is I to the power of 3. And that's not in its lowest terms. And I know that I to the power of 3 is just negative I. And I squared times negative 3 is negative 3i squared. So I need to get some simplifying done. So negative 3 times negative 1 turns out to be positive 3. So now let's circle all the complex numbers. I have complex number here, 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 and there.